Welcome to another journey through Western New York. Today we're traveling from Rochester to Lockport, following New York Route 104 across Monroe, Orleans, and Niagara Counties. This route traces nearly 2 centuries of growth and change. Our drive begins at the Kodak Center in Rochester, a reminder of the city's rise as one of America's great industrial centers. We'll then follow Ridge Road, an ancient shoreline that guided travelers long before modern highways existed. As we cross Orleans County, we'll explore how land purchases, frontier settlement, and the Erie Canal opened Western New York to farmers, merchants, and new communities. Finally, we'll arrive in Lockport, where one of the Erie Canal's greatest engineering challenges was overcome at the Niagara Escarpment. This is more than a drive across Western New York. It's a journey through the region's evolution, from wilderness to farmland, from canal boats to railroads, from industrial giants to a modern economy built on education, healthcare, technology, tourism, and advanced manufacturing. Our journey begins at the Kodak Center, one of the most recognizable landmarks in Rochester. Today, the facility hosts concerts, sporting events, conventions, and community gatherings, but its roots are closely tied to the company that helped define Rochester for more than a century. To understand Kodak Center, it's important to understand the enormous influence of Eastman Kodak. Founded by George Eastman in the late 19th century, Kodak transformed photography from a specialized profession into an activity that ordinary people could enjoy. The company's famous slogan, "You press the button, we do the rest," reflected a simple goal, making photography accessible to everyone. By the middle of the 20th century, Rochester had become synonymous with Kodak. The company operated massive manufacturing facilities across the region. The sprawling Kodak Park complex west of downtown became one of the largest industrial sites in the world. Research laboratories, chemical plants, film production lines, and engineering facilities employed generations of workers. Entire neighborhoods grew around Kodak employment, and many local businesses depended directly or indirectly on the company's success. Visitors exploring Rochester today can still find reminders of this legacy. The Kodak Center stands as a visible symbol of the company's influence. Nearby, portions of Kodak Park continue operating under various businesses and technology companies. In downtown Rochester, the historic headquarters buildings remain part of the city's skyline. The city's museums, universities, and cultural institutions also benefited from Kodak's philanthropy and investment over many decades. At its peak during the 1970s and 1980s, Kodak employed more than 60,000 people in the Rochester area. For many local families, Kodak offered stable careers, competitive wages, and opportunities that could span an entire working lifetime. The company's influence extended far beyond photography. It supported scientific research, education programs, arts organizations, healthcare initiatives, and community development throughout the region. The arrival of digital photography dramatically changed the industry. As film sales declined, Kodak's workforce shrank, and Rochester faced one of the most significant economic transitions in its history. Yet, Rochester adapted. Today, the local economy is far more diversified than during Kodak's peak years. Major employers include healthcare systems, universities, optics and photonics companies, advanced manufacturers, software firms, and research institutions. Many of the technical skills that once supported Kodak found new life in emerging industries. Rochester remains a global center for imaging science, optics, lasers, and precision manufacturing. While Kodak no longer dominates the local economy as it once did, its legacy continues to shape the city's identity, workforce, and culture. As we leave Rochester behind, we're also leaving behind one chapter of Western New York's story and heading toward a much older one. As we head west on Route 104, we're traveling along a corridor with a much older history than the highways themselves. Much of Route 104 follows the route of Ridge Road, which sits atop an ancient shoreline left behind by prehistoric Lake Iroquois, a massive glacial lake that existed thousands of years ago. Long before automobiles, this elevated ridge provided a natural travel route for native peoples, early settlers, and stagecoaches. The ridge offered dry ground above surrounding wetlands and became one of the earliest transportation corridors across western New York. As we cross into Orleans County, the farms, orchards, and quiet villages around us may seem timeless. But just a little more than 2 centuries ago, this landscape looked entirely different. Imagine standing here in the late 18th century. There are no highways, no farms, and no towns. Dense forests stretch to the horizon. Rivers and streams cut through the wilderness. For generations, native peoples, including the Seneca Nation, lived throughout this region, hunting, fishing, farming, and traveling along well-established routes. After the American Revolution, however, a complicated struggle emerged over who controlled Western New York. Both New York and Massachusetts claimed ownership of the vast territory based on overlapping colonial charters. To settle the dispute, the 2 states signed the Treaty of Hartford in 1786. The agreement was unusual. New York retained the right to govern the land, while Massachusetts gained the right to purchase it from native nations and sell it for settlement. Those rights became known as preemption rights, and they would set the stage for one of the largest land transactions in American history. 5 years later, in 1791, Robert Morris entered the story. Morris was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a financier of the American Revolution, and one of the wealthiest men in the young United States. He purchased the preemption rights to roughly 3.75 million acres west of the Genesee River. His vision was ambitious: acquire the wilderness, sell parcels to settlers, and profit from the westward expansion of the nation. But even Morris struggled to manage such an enormous undertaking. Burdened by debt, he soon sold most of the land to a group of Dutch investors represented by agent Theophile Cazenove. The transaction eventually became known as the Holland Purchase, one of the largest private real estate deals in American history. Millions of acres changed hands, covering much of what is now Western New York. Yet owning the land on paper was only the beginning. The new investors needed someone to transform a wilderness into a place people could actually settle. They turned to surveyor Joseph Ellicott, whose work would permanently shape the region. Starting in 1798, Ellicott and his crews entered the forests and began an extraordinary task. They measured, mapped, and divided the land into a systematic grid of townships and ranges. They marked future roads, established property lines, and created a framework for future communities. Their regional headquarters was established in nearby Batavia, which quickly became the administrative center for settlement throughout Western New York. Many of the roads we travel today, and even some property boundaries, can trace their origins back to Ellicott's survey lines more than 2 centuries ago. As settlers arrived from New England and the eastern states, forests were cleared and farms were established. Life was difficult. Early families faced isolation, harsh winters, primitive roads, and limited access to markets. But opportunities were abundant for those willing to endure the hardships of frontier life. Then came the event that changed everything. In 1825, the very same year Orleans County was officially created from Genesee County, the Erie Canal opened across New York State. Suddenly, farmers who had once been days or weeks away from major markets could ship products efficiently to Albany, New York City, and beyond. The timing could not have been better. Orleans County was born at the exact moment Western New York was entering a new era of growth and prosperity. As communities matured, another distinctive feature began appearing across the countryside. Builders collected rounded stones left behind by ancient glaciers and gathered from nearby fields and Lake Ontario shorelines. Between about 1830 and 1860, these stones were used to construct homes, churches, schools, and businesses. Today, Orleans County contains one of the highest concentrations of historic cobblestone buildings anywhere in North America, a unique architectural legacy of the Canal era. The peaceful farmland we see today is the result of centuries of change: native homelands, disputed territories, ambitious land speculators, Dutch investors, pioneering settlers, and the transformative power of the Erie Canal. Every mile through Orleans County follows a landscape shaped by some of the most important events in the settlement of western New York. Western New York's climate, influenced by nearby Lake Ontario, creates favorable conditions for fruit production. Orleans County became especially known for apples, cherries, peaches, and other crops. The combination of fertile soil, moderate temperatures, and transportation access helped agriculture become the economic foundation of many local communities. Even today, farming remains an important part of the region's identity, and large orchards can be found throughout the county. As Route 78 carries us toward Lockport, it's worth remembering that this city was never supposed to exist. Unlike many communities in western New York that grew around rivers, harbors, or crossroads, Lockport was created because engineers encountered a problem. In the early 1820s, construction crews building the Erie Canal were making steady progress across New York State. The canal had already crossed forests, wetlands, and rolling farmland. But here, just ahead, stood a formidable obstacle, the Niagara Escarpment. The escarpment is a massive ridge of limestone and dolomite stretching across western New York and beyond. It's the same geological formation responsible for creating Niagara Falls. At Lockport, the land rises nearly 60 feet over a relatively short distance. For canal builders, that elevation change posed a serious challenge. Boats could not simply climb a hill. Engineers considered various solutions, but eventually settled on a bold plan. Instead of going around the escarpment, they would build a staircase of locks that would raise and lower canal boats in stages. The result became known as the Flight of 5 Locks. Imagine a canal boat arriving here in the 1820s. Horses towing the vessel would stop at the first lock. Water levels would be carefully controlled, lifting the boat upward. The process would then repeat 4 more times until the vessel had climbed the entire escarpment. For travelers of the era, it was an impressive sight and one of the engineering wonders of the young United States. Constructing the locks was a massive undertaking. Thousands of workers quarried stone directly from the escarpment itself. The rock removed to create the canal became the material used to build the lock walls. Much of that original stonework still survives today, nearly 2 centuries later. The project solved a critical transportation problem. Without these locks, a continuous water route between the Hudson River and the Great Lakes would have been impossible. The success of the Erie Canal depended on overcoming this very obstacle. And once the obstacle was solved, a city was born. The impact of the Erie Canal extended far beyond Lockport itself. Before the canal opened, moving goods across western New York was slow and expensive. Farmers often produced more crops than they could profitably transport. Reaching markets along the Hudson River or the Atlantic coast could take weeks. The canal changed everything. A farmer in Orleans County or Niagara County could now load wheat, corn, apples, or other products onto canal boats and send them eastward at a fraction of the previous cost. Goods that once spoiled before reaching market could now be shipped efficiently to growing cities. The canal transformed the landscape around us. Forests continued to be cleared. New farms appeared across the region. Villages grew into towns. General stores, blacksmith shops, grain elevators, and warehouses emerged wherever transportation routes intersected. Orchards became especially important throughout the Lake Ontario region. The nearby lake helped moderate temperatures, reducing the risk of damaging spring frosts. Combined with fertile soils and improved transportation, the area became increasingly known for fruit production. By the mid-19th century, apples, peaches, cherries, pears, and other crops were moving through the canal system to consumers hundreds of miles away. What had once been isolated frontier settlements became connected to national and international markets. In many ways, the canal turned western New York into one of America's earliest agricultural export regions. The prosperity generated by canal commerce could be seen everywhere. Schools, churches, public buildings, and businesses were constructed. Wealth accumulated in communities large and small. Some of the beautiful cobblestone buildings found throughout nearby Orleans County were built during this very period, reflecting the success brought by canal-era agriculture and trade. Eventually, railroads, highways, and modern transportation reduced the canal's economic importance. The busy commercial traffic that once filled these waterways largely disappeared. Yet Lockport adapted. Today, manufacturing, healthcare, education, tourism, and local businesses form the foundation of the local economy. The city has also preserved one of the most remarkable pieces of Erie Canal infrastructure anywhere in the country. As we approach downtown, we're not just entering another Western New York community. We're arriving at a place where engineers solved one of the greatest challenges of the Erie Canal, where a city emerged almost overnight, and where the success of that solution helped transform Western New York from frontier wilderness into one of the most productive and prosperous regions in 19th century America. Ahead, the locks still stand as a reminder that sometimes an entire city can be built around a single idea. Finding a way forward when the landscape says stop.